Alright, so first things first, let's go to Polygon Plane. And I'm going to show you how to make a little tunnel. And this works with any surface. I'm just using a plane for simplicity. And I'll take all the divisions off. There we go. Alright, so now I'm just going to use my insert edge loop. And actually, let me start off with a cylinder here. And I'm just going to kind of place the cylinder where I want my tunnel to be, kind of as a layout. Just say something like that. Okay. So now that I have this, I can go to wireframe, go to my insert edge loop tool, and just insert a division right there, and right there. And the second one, I can come up here and just set the weight to 0.5. Go down to the other one. This one's kind of, specific to that, so I'm just going to leave it at 0.529. Alright, so there's that. And then I can just start inserting some more divisions. Maybe one here, maybe one there. What I like to do, though, to keep these kind of spaced evenly apart, is if I click this, or double click it, I can go to multiple edges and say 2, and I just click, click, and you can see how that automatically adds 2 divisions perfectly divided. Okay, so now I'm just going to grab the vertices. Come on. And I'm just going to pull these out. Now I don't want to pull this one out here, because if I look where this one is, this one seems like it should flow closer to that one. So I can just pull that there. I pull that in line. I can pull this one to where that guy is. Pull this one to where that guy is. You can see where I'm going with this. Pull this one up a bit. Okay, and I'm actually just going to work on one side. So I can just delete those faces. And I can go through and insert some more loops. I just want to adjust some of these points. I'm going to delete some of this stuff, but I just like to keep the flow nice for now. And I don't really need the second one, so I can just delete that edge. There we go. Okay. So now if I go through and just delete these faces here, there we go. Come on, wrong button. There we go. Now just hide this. So there's half my tunnel. So now I can just go to Mesh, Mirror Geometry, and I'm going in the -X. There's my tunnel. And I'll make sure that if I hit 3, everything's nice and smooth still, which is good. I can take the edges here. Actually, let me click this one and shift double click this one. There we go. That way I just get that perimeter. I can extrude, switch to the move tool, and pull this in. And I could even rotate and move and do whatever. Okay. Or what I can do instead of doing that is I could say mesh fill hole. Okay. Sometimes it works, sometimes it don't. That's why we have edit mesh append, where we can just do this manually. So I can just click, start on this side, there we go. Perfect. Okay, so I just filled that hole back in, and I'm going to delete it eventually. First, I'm going to go to my side view. Actually, we'll go to the top view. That'll be easier to draw it. And then I can create a CB curve. I'm going to keep these first 2 points in line and then kind of go off from there. I'm trying to do some fancy, pathway here. Something like that. So I'm going to grab the face, shift click the curve, edit mesh, extrude. make sure that the curve setting is set to selected. Okay, so then I can just add divisions, and I can type in more divisions. There we go. And you'll see that it kind of dips down and then goes into it, just because my curve is, below the ground. So I just grab it and I move it up until we're in line. There we go. So now there's my tunnel, and then here's the other side, so I can just grab that and just delete it. Or I can go through and edit mesh, extrude it. And let's take the offset up. There we go. And I could even move this. Extrude it again. Move tool, pull it out. And then I can delete it. Okay, I'll see like that. Okay, and then if I needed to, I can take this guy and just flatten out the top of this, flatten out the sides of this. There we go. Now you see here we have basically the same setup on both sides. Okay, now I can take this piece and just attach it to basically anything. If I take a cube, there's my cube. I'm just going to, for alignment purposes, just going to use my snapping tools if I can figure out which they are. There they are. So now those front faces are aligned. And I can go through and insert some divisions in the front view. There it is. Oops. And make sure that my tool is set to relative so that I can click and drag where I want it to go. There. Too close. There. There, and about there. Okay, then I can just delete that face. I can grab both of these objects, go to mesh, go to combine, go to edit mesh, go to merge, and then it's not as emerges because they're not close enough, so I'll just go to edit mesh, merge vert tool. And then I can click and drag to merge these guys together. Okay, now it's not going to merge anything that doesn't have a point that's already there. So if I wanted this to fully be merged, I would have to insert divisions along this and this and that and that. That would match the ones that we have here. Okay, so I'm just going to insert those divisions so we can get those. Insert edge loop right there. Okay. I'll start up at top because it's a little easier to see. That. And the same thing on the side. Oops. Insert a division here just so I can pop these in. And it's going all the way around, so I don't have to worry about putting them on here too. Okay, now I did do the bottom, which I want to kind of do manually, so I'm just going to grab these and Control Delete, so I can insert those by myself. Okay, now I can also go to Edit Mesh, Interactive Split, and I can just put, just gonna make sure I click the right line. Right now they're kind of bunched up, so I'm just going to move this one point. There we go. So I can just click this one point and hit Enter. click a point and hit enter. And now I can go back to my merge vert tool. There you go. And then, you know, because it's a piece of architecture, it doesn't really need to kind of flow all the way around with the vertices, so I can go through and clean up any points that I just don't really need there. And a lot of times, you know, it's going to work out okay. As long as I'm not doing anything where I need any deformation in the surface, you know, we can get away with a bit more messy geometry. And these guys are so close, I think we can use the merge right there. Okay, so now we have our hole right here. There's our tunnel. We could also go through this too and go to the interactive split tool. And I'm just going to take my mega tolerance up. Oops, hit the wrong button to get out of it. Alright, it's not liking me inserting them this way, so I'll just go through and do these first. Alright, we'll just ignore that if we wanted to. We could. I was just going to show an extra thing of how we could extrude this, which I could still do if I reshaped these points going around this, and I extrude that. That would work also. Or if I grab these here, minus that guy, and I extruded it, pulled it in, you see how we have a nice arc, that works too. Extrude it again. Oops. Face back there selected, and right there selected. There we go. Pull that out and make a nice little piece here. Okay. And drop in some land and do whatever. Alright. So that's just a quick way to kind of add some stuff in here. One of my preferred ways to do anything like that, like if we look at a tunnel, something like this, is you just create a little section. Okay, and just drop that section in there. You don't have to worry about connecting it to anything. You know, even like this, I could just create a tunnel of bricks and just kind of stick it in there and just cut the rest of the things off or let them intersect. That works too. Okay, now the next thing I'm going to show is, let's go with a sphere. Make it a little bit more interesting than a cube. Alright, so here's a sphere. Here's the default UV layout of that. Not very pretty when we start applying a texture. If I throw a Lambert on this, and then I map a checkerboard, and we hit 6, you can see here that these are stretched out, and then up here, these are tight and triangled. Okay, and if I go into edit my checkerboard pattern, and let's say we added, 30 and 30, I'll take my renderer to viewport. Okay, you see we're getting the same kind of thing, and up here it just becomes a huge mess. Alright, so there's a program called Roadkill. For a Mac, it doesn't exist. So if you have a PC, it works great. But it allows you just to kind of insert some edges here and then just say, split this thing, and then bammo whammo, it's done. But yes, I don't believe there is a Mac version available. But here's how it works. I go to Roadkill, live unwrap. Okay, here's my sphere. I just go to select right here, UV mode, or edge mode select, that's what I want. And I say, okay, I want to cut this right here. So I'm going to double click, and then say C for cut. And you see how I cut it, dropped it here, here's the other part. Okay, it's not done yet. Let's also cut it over here. I'm going to make it a bigger cut. Cut. And I'm going to double click this one again and go to Weld, W. I'm going to double click this one and go to C, cut. Okay, and I'm also going to cut it this way. So I'm just going to grab this edge here. I'm just shift clicking this all the way down and then C to cut it. Now if I see that I've accidentally cut some stuff in the middle, I can always marquee it in here and then just hit W for weld. There's the guy there. There we go. So these UVs, if you look at their shape, much nicer layout. You know, the square size is consistent, and that's what we're after. Okay, so I just close it, and there it is. Okay, now we do have a seam. That's fine. Mudbox will take care of that. Just close that. Now, the other thing I could have done in here is done a spherical mapping, and then stretched it out until my guides were a little bit more evenly sized, and then grab the faces for, let's say, this part, did a planar mapping from the Y. Well, it might be too far down. I mean, a little bit of stretching. Let's go with something like that. There we go. And I can just stretch this out until these are about the same size. And I can do the same thing on the bottom. There we go. Okay, so similar process. Just one we're doing it manually. The other one's a bit more accurate because here we don't have the same stuff. All right, so now in Roadkill, it kind of laid them out nicely in this square, where this method just stacks them all on top of each other. Okay. Well, I'm going to grab some of the UVs. Go to Select Shell. Oops. Select Shell. There we go. Just move this up here. I'm going to click on one of these. Select Shell. Move it over there, and then this should be the rest of them. Okay. So now if we look at this, I want all of these things to fit nicely inside of one square. But the problem with that is if I wanted to bring in a huge texture, if I'm doing like something where we're going to get really, really close to this area here, you know, when we look at the final texture, it's going to be like maybe like 10 pixels, 20 pixels, right? And we can't up this resolution here because then it'll just freak my out. So what we're going to do is I'm going to grab all of these guys, and this guy here I'm going to split. So I'm actually going to just go to here and say polygons, cut UV edge. And so now if I go to select shell, there we go. Okay, so now I have another piece. So now this piece, well, it's pretty close. I'm going to scale all these down just a little bit. I'm going to grab all of them, scale them down slightly. That way all these pieces individually would fit nicely inside here. Okay. So I'm going to go to this, and I'm basically going to lay this out like that. Okay, so I have one texture here, I'll have another texture here, and another texture there, and another texture there. Okay, and to see that, I'm going to go to View Grid, and where it says Length and Width, I'm just going to say 5. And I want to see the subdivision lines, maybe not those. I want to see the tiles. There we go, that's what I want. And now I can just grab these, select the shell, fit this guy here, and I think this guy would probably fit in the same one. Okay, so now I can create one 4K texture for this section, one 4K texture for that section, and another 4K texture for these two. And because they're all proportionate to each other, then we should be good. All right, so now I'm just going to take this in a Mudbox. So let me just save this. I duplicated it. we go. And I'll go to Send to Mudbox as a new scene. Alright, so I go into Mudbox and I get this little error message, or the issue message. Basically, the sphere inside Maya has a vertex that a bunch of vertices are going to. And it's just saying you might get some artifact if you're using mesh smoothing, which we're not going to be using that. So I'm just going to say keep this mesh. And here's my sphere in Mudbox. Come on. There we go. So we're just painting a texture on this. So what I'm going to do is go to the paint tools, and I can use a paintbrush, and I need to create a texture here. So once I start clicking, it'll say, do you want to paint a texture? And I say, I sure do. And I want it to be a 4K texture because I want to get close to this, and it's going to be sphere 01, sure. And we're painting the diffuse channel, which is color, and TIFF 8-bit should be fine for what we're doing. You could make it obviously a 16 or 32-bit. You're not going to get a whole lot from what we're doing. Alright, so now I have the paintbrush, B, brush size. Okay, hold B, left click and drag. Here's the color, so I can come over here and pick red, and then I can start painting on it. And then as I spin around, you can see that all my seams and stuff are becoming overwritten. Okay, I also have reflection turned on, which I could turn off. Fall off. Oh, there it is, mirror. Oh, here we go. And now we won't be mirroring things. Okay, so now I have this wonderful texture. It's going over all of them. If I look at my UVs, you'll see that it's painting on all of these pieces. Now there's nothing here yet because I just haven't painted anything in that section. There we go. Now I go back to UVs, and you can see it's blending nicely between all of these. Oops. Click the right picture. There we go. Okay, and I can also use a projection. So I have to go through, it says, design to work with stencil, so please select a stencil. So I go to the stencil, and I have pictures here that I can use. Here's a picture of an ear. And I can just use S and right mouse button to scale this down. And then I'm going to hit Q to hide the stencil. My stencil doesn't seem to be working. It's on, it's there, to do, visibility, multiplier, offset. Let's try a different stencil. Yeah, there we go. No, maybe that picture's just not working. Okay, and I can offset that. If I want to bring in my own image, I just go up to the image browser, I find an image, like here's a picture of a snake, and then I can just I come over here and say set as stencil. And then when I come to my 3D view, there's a snake. And now I'm painting the snake. Okay, and it is coloring it odd. Go back to my image browser. I also set it as a stamp, which would paint the texture there. So if I had something specific, it would paint just like that. My opacity might be down for my brush. Let me make sure. If I fall off like that. No. Strength, there we go. Okay, and then here's the color. So I make that white, you see a perfect picture. So let's go back to the image browser, set this as a stencil. Q so we can see the stencil. We can change the visibility of the stencil. We should be able to. Oh, I'm still in my other brush. Stamp is off. Stencil. There we go. Okay. So here's a picture of a snake. I'll even make it so it fits the entire thing. Wonderful, perfect, glorious. Alright, so now we can just take this out. So I'll just switch my stencil off. Go to my UV, so just so you can see, there's the pictures of the snake and all my textures. And you can see how close I can get to this. Obviously, the higher the resolution of texture, the higher I can get to closer to that. So there it is. So if I just go to my extract maps, I just want, actually I need to transfer paint layer. There you go. No, I don't need to do that. This all should be saved. So when I go to save scene, it's going to go and follow 2540 scenes. Yes. Oh. There we go. Alright, so here's that scenes folder where I saved my Mudbox file to. Here's my Mudbox file. Now it has these three diffuse background U1, U2, and U3. You can delete these are garbage. But then these are the ones we want. These are the ones that have the actual file in there. So now if I come back to Maya and I go to my Hypershade, and I'm going to go to the file node here. There we go. And we'll just graph these out. And I'm just going to bring in each one of those. So it's in my scenes, Mudbox. Here's number 1. So I'll just call this file 1. The next one. Let me view this just to make sure that it's showing correctly. It looks like it's gray here. Alright, I guess it's the other way. Right click on that and say export selected. And then snake source images. 40. Say this in the right spot. Alright, so I didn't export the other ones for some reason. I should have. Fault, number 40, source images. There we go. Let's try that again. Ball 1, there we go. Ball 2. And this one will be ball 3. Okay. So now we have 3 textures here. If I go and add this to a Mia, X passes. Okay, so I'm going to drop the Mia on here. There it is. And then it only allows me to take this file and connect it to one, right? I can just drop one of these at a time on here, and it'll assume that, and then what happens is the other ones are just getting pieces of that texture which is not lined up correct. Okay? So what I need to do is find this average node right here, and I'm going to connect all 3 of these into that average node. Okay? So file 1, I'm going to drop it on here and say input 0. File 2, I'm going to drag it on here, input 1. file 3, middle dragon on here, input 2. Okay? Then what I can do is take this and drop it onto that. And I can delete this arrow here that's just a nothing arrow. There we go. Okay? So now what's happening is all three of these textures are in the exact same spot, lined up. Okay? So if we look at the UVs for the sphere, and I go to file 1, here's where file 1 is. If I go to file 2, there's where file 2 is. If I go to file 3, here's where file 3 is. What I want to happen is 1 should be here, 2 should be here, and 3 should be there. Okay? So what we have to do is go to the place 2D texture for each of these and turn wrapping off. Okay? And what we're going to see the second we turn wrapping off is that the texture is not going to go onto all three of them. Okay? So one of the UV1 will be laid out correctly, but 2 and 3 will not be. Okay, it's still thinking, still thinking, still thinking. There we go. Okay, so you see that the one area of this has the UVs laid out, but the other areas do not. Okay, so now what I need to do is I need to take these images and I need to offset them. So I'm just going to go to number 2 here and say translate frame 1. Okay, and then what we're going to see is that that basically takes number 2 and it offsets it across. So I'm going to grab the third one, I'm going to offset that one, 2, and that should fill up the top and the bottom. Now what's happening here, it's kind of like washing it out. Okay, it's kind of like, you know, horrible. If we go to the UVs and we look again at the sphere, here's file 1, here's file 2. Now you see it's not showing it here just because of where it shows all the stuff, which is fine. I don't think there's any way to show that. Yeah, there isn't. Okay. But what's happening is when it goes into this area, it's making this area this gray color here. Okay, and what I wanted to do is make it black because it's gray, and it's taking the average, or the right now it's doing the sum. It just ends up like that. So I'm going to go in each one of these files, go to the color balance, and just take default color to black. Go to file 2, default color to black. Go to file 1, default color to black. There we go. So now, if this updates correctly, and we can just spin around. There we go. So now we have a pretty nice texture on here that otherwise we wouldn't be able to get. We wouldn't be able to get the same resolution on this if we tried to pack all of these things into one spot. Okay? So the process was we went into Maya, created the sphere. We laid out the UVs, and we offset them into these separate branches. We sent that to Mudbox. Bam. We came into Mudbox, we created a 4K texture. We used the projection node to paint all over this to make it look perfect, exactly the way we wanted it to look. We right-clicked, we exported the selected, we brought them in as file nodes. We went to the place 2D textures on all of them and turned the wrapping off. And then we went to the file node and turned the default color off. And then we went and we offset. So the first one, which is file 1, doesn't get any translate frame. File 2 gets a translate frame of 1. File 3 gets a translate frame of 2. So there we are. And then we can take this plus minus and we could drop it into, let's say, reflectivity. And it's going to take a second to update because I connected it. And there we go. So now we have reflectivity in here that's reading from this file into those same areas. Okay, not a huge difference in here, but once we render it, you know, on a better example, this would show. Okay, so that's the process.